passage is about a different Scylla or Scylla from the previous one. And it begins, Parvus erat gurges. Now remember, with a word like erat or erant or est or sunt, that it can mean he or she or it was or is, but sometimes it means there was or there is. I think that's the meaning here. So parvus erat gurges, there was, erat, a small pool, parvus gurges. And then the gurges is described as sinuatus. Okay, this is a PPP, which means having been bent, really, having been bent in curvos arcus, into curved bows, curvos arcus. And probably, even though arcus is plural, it's really, the meaning is more like a singular, into a curved bow. So there was a small pool that was bent into a kind of bow shape, a curved bow shape. And then this pool is described as the grata quies, the welcome resting place of Scylla, Scyllae, genitive. Quo means to there, to that place, to there. She used to referebat, literally, referebat se, literally, she used to carry herself back. So to there, she used to bring herself back, ab aistu, from the heat, both of the sea et maris, and of the sky et caeli. So remember that a repeated et can be translated into English as both, and then and. Cum, when. Remember, cum plus ablative can mean with, but here you've got cum with a verb, meaning when. When the sun, sol, erat, when the sun was, plurimus, right, sort of greatest or strongest, medio orbe. And in prose, you'd probably have the word in as well, in medio orbe, in the middle of its path or circuit or something like that. And the subject is still the sun, and when the sun, a vertice, from its peak, from its high point, had made, fecerat, pluperfect, the smallest shadows, minimas umbras. So remember, we're talking about midday, and so of course midday is the time when the sun makes the smallest shadows, because it's directly above the thing that it's shining on. Okay. Now, Scylla venit, Scylla comes, and where? She had descended, descenderat, pluperfect. She had descended. Now, tenus means as far as, and it takes ablative. So, Scylla comes and had descended as far as media alvo, the middle of her stomach. When, cum, when she ad spicit, when she notices, and if you notice that something is the case, you're going into an indirect statement. And Latin does that with accusative and infinitive. So in Latin, you don't notice that someone is tall. You notice someone, accusative, to be tall, infinitive. So, when she noticed, and then we have to find our accusative, which is sua inguina. When she noticed that her loins, her private parts, if you like, foidare. Now, foidare is to disfigure something, right? To sort of mutilate something. but foedare, that would be the active infinitive. This is foedari, the passive infinitive. So when she notices that her loins are being disfigured, latrantibus monstris, with barking monsters. So a monstrum is a monster, and latrare is to bark like a dog, and this is the participle barking, right? And both of these are ablative because it's like an instrument that, her loins are being disfigured with or by these things. So, because this is Scylla the girl or woman turning into Scylla the monster. So, when she notices that her loins are being disfigured with barking monsters, and at first, ac primo, believing, um, now, believing that those illas, now you have to sort of supply partes here. So, and this is another accusative infinitive after credates. So, believing that those parts are not non esse, there's your infinitive, are not parts, partes, of sui corporis, genitive, of her own body. So in other words, she's looking down and she's seeing these kind of barking monsters, these dogs below her waist, and she doesn't realize that they are actually parts now of her own body because she's being transformed into a kind of monster. So that's the idea. So so Credens introduces an indirect statement, which is accusative plus infinitive, and the accusative is illas partes, if you like, and the infinitive is esse. So believing that those parts are not non esse, or are not parts of her own body, corporis sui. And then you've got quer repeated here, so you can translate it as both and then and, just like the repeated et earlier in the passage. And so she both refugit, runs away, and abigit, and drives away, and fears, timet, the proterva ora, the violent mouths of the dogs. So canum is genitive plural of the third declension noun canis, meaning a dog. But, said, the ones which she flees from, so quos means the ones which, perhaps it's masculine, perhaps referring to the dogs. So the ones which she flees, or flees from, fugit, she leads, right? This is from ad traho, or at traho, which is to sort of bring along with you. So the point is, well, let's finish the sentence. So she leads una, ablative, which means as one, together. So in other words, she's trying to run away from the dogs that she sees below her waist, but as she runs away from them, she is actually bringing them with her, una, together with her, right? And the reason that she can't run away from them, and the reason that she's bringing them sort of as one, as one creature with her, is because they are, in fact, now part of her body. Right? She has been transformed into this kind of monster with barking dogs below her waist that are now part of her body. Okay. Scylla in line 10. Scylla remained, mansit. That's the perfect tense from maneo manere. She remained in place, loco, in her place. In prose, you probably have the word in first, in loco, but in verse, you can just use the ablative. She remained in place, and when cumque, a copia, an opportunity, data est, was given. That's perfect passive. So when an opportunity was given, notice that data est, the normal word order is just swapped around. So when an opportunity was given, now primum odium, that means as her first hatred, or perhaps act of hatred, and in fact, sorry, yes, in goes with primum and odium. So into, or as, her first hatred, or her first act of hatred of Circe, right? Kirkes is the Greek genitive form of Circe. So as her first act of hatred of Circe, she spoliavit Ulixem, she robbed Ulysses of his companions, Socies. So spoliare means to rob someone of something, and it takes accusative, the person that you're robbing, and then ablative, the thing that you are taking away from them. So you rob Ulysses of his companions. Ulysses goes into the accusative, the companions into the ablative. Soon, mocks. She, mersura fuerat. Okay. Now, fuerat means had been. And here, the idea is would have been, because we have here the word ni, meaning sort of unless. So she would have been mersura. Okay, now, mergo mergere means to sink something, like the English word submerge. The PPP is mersum, having been sunk, and therefore mersurus is the future active participle, the future active participle. So literally this means soon she would have been about to sink. She would have been about to sink. And eadem is referring to Circe. So you say she, or the same woman, would have been about to sink the Trojan ships, the Teucras Carinas, if not, ni, that means if not or unless, sometimes written nissi. If not, if not first, prius, so if something hadn't happened beforehand, if she hadn't first transformata foret, been transformed in scopulum, into a crag or a rock, something like that, into a rock, scopulus, which is here in the accusative case, into a rock, which now, qui nunc, also stands out, quoque extat, so which now as well stands out, saxeus, made of rock. So, in other words, Scylla did in fact eat a lot of Odysseus's companions, but she didn't eat Aeneas's companions when they went past. Why? Because she'd already been turned into a rock, which, before Aeneas and his companions arrived. And Ovid is saying, and actually, if you go there now, you can still see that crag made of rock. That's the point. And then he says, a sailor, navita, by which I think he means sailors in general, a sailor also avoids the crag, scopulum. So even though Scylla is now safe, right, she's not a monster anymore, she's been turned to stone, Even so, she was so scary that soldiers still avoid her anyway, even now that she's made of stone.